The invasion fleet arrived with all the subtlety of a wrecking ball. Thousands of warships, each bristling with enough firepower to turn Earth into a cautionary tale, dropped into orbit. They didn't bother hiding. They wanted to be seen. The Zharn Dominion, a species so universally disliked that even their own historians wrote about them begrudgingly, had decided humanity's time was up. The message came in all languages, broadcasted on every screen, radio, and holographic device. A towering, insectoid figure appeared. Supreme Commander Kallix-Var, a name that sounded like something you'd order well done at a steakhouse. His mandibles clicked in irritation as he began the standard conqueror's speech. Humans, your species is remarkably persistent. It has been amusing to observe your wars, your petty conflicts, your insistence on existing despite all logic. But the amusement is over. You have two choices: surrender and serve the Dominion. He paused for effect, allowing his warriors to puff out their thoraxes behind him. Or resist and be extinguished. The message looped for an hour. The world, predictably, lost its collective mind. Presidents, kings, and dictators alike scrambled for an answer. The United Nations held an emergency summit where someone actually suggested trying to negotiate, as if bargaining with a species that had the diplomatic subtlety of a chainsaw was an option. Generals discussed last stands, stock markets crashed, doomsday cults threw impromptu raves, and one very persistent billionaire insisted he could build a spaceship and escape if people just sent him more money. Then, as panic gripped the planet, another message cut through the airwaves. Surrender denied. Prepare for consequences. The Zharn command bridge fell silent. Kallix-Var's mandibles twitched. Where did that transmission originate? A lower-ranking officer hesitated. It appears to be coming from a human warship. A warship? The commander scoffed. They have warships? We didn't detect any formidable resistance. That's the odd thing, the officer said, pressing translucent screens with one of his many spindly fingers. This one's strange. It doesn't match any Earth military design. In fact, his chitinous skin paled. It was declared destroyed 7 years ago. For the first time, Kallix-Var looked uneasy. Explain. The officer swallowed. The ship is called the Pale Rider. Silence fell over the bridge. Even the ones who had no idea what that meant instinctively felt it was bad. Zharn did not fear much, but ghost stories? Every species had those. The Pale Rider had been a whispered legend among soldiers. A human warship that shouldn't exist, with a pilot who refused to die. The rumors varied. Some said it was an experimental ship that vanished into a black hole and returned wrong. Others claimed it was the vengeful spirit of a fallen captain, cursed to wander the void, destroying those who dared attack Earth. The truth? It was worse. Before Kallix-Var could demand an explanation, the sensors flared. The Pale Rider was moving. Not towards them. Through them. 5 destroyers were sent to intercept. 5 destroyers ceased to exist. One moment, they were there, sleek, armored, bristling with weapons. The next, chunks of flaming debris spiraled into the atmosphere, scattering across the night sky like premature fireworks. The commander barely had time to react before the view screen flickered. The static resolved into a single human face, hollow-cheeked, dark-eyed, and wearing the expression of a man who had once been a part of civilization but had long since discarded its rules. "Graves," Kallix-Var muttered. The man in the transmission grinned. "Heard you were looking for a surrender." Thought-eyed RSVP. Kallix-Var composed himself. "You are Commander Elias Graves. The ghost. The myth." His mandibles clicked in contempt. "But you are just one man." Graves stretched as if waking from a nap, then cracked his knuckles. "And you're just one overgrown roach sitting in a very large, very flammable chair." Kallix-Var bristled. "You believe a single warship." "Correction," Graves cut in. Asterisk, asterisk, the asterisk, asterisk warship. The Pale Rider was unlike anything in Earth's recorded fleet. No official logs existed. No government owned it. It wasn't built to win wars. It was built to end them, asterisk, asterisk, the culmination of every desperate technological leap, every salvaged alien wreck, every mad scientist's fever dream thrown together in a ship that shouldn't work, but did. It had no fleet. It needed no fleet. "You are outnumbered," Kallix-Var hissed. Graves chuckled. No, you are. Then the pale rider vanished. Not in a normal way, not a retreat, not a hyperspace jump, not a trick of the sensors. It ceased to be in front of them and reappeared behind them, as if reality itself had decided to let it cheat. 3 more Zharn destroyers erupted into clouds of fire and molten wreckage. Kallix-Var's claws dug into his command chair as panic flickered through his ranks. The bridge, once a place of cold calculation, now reeked of uncertainty. The humans weren't supposed to be like this. They were supposed to break under superior force, surrender like all the others. Yet here was one of them, laughing as he tore through their forces like a scythe through grain. The Supreme Commander snarled, "Enough! Target the planet. If they will not surrender, we will reduce it to ash." The weapons officers hesitated. Kallix-Var slammed a clawed fist onto the console. Fire. Power surged through the flagship's massive planetary bombardment cannons. Energy capable of turning entire continents into smoking craters. Graves' voice came through again. Calm. Unshaken. Oh, you shouldn't have done that. And then the world went dark. The Zharn fleet screens flickered and died. Targeting systems failed. Weapons powered down. The Pale Rider had jammed them. All of them. Kallix-Var's eyes widened. Impossible. Graves' voice, now utterly devoid of humor, rumbled through their systems. You came for Earth, surrender. You'll leave as ghosts. And then the slaughter truly began. Kallix-Var was not accustomed to fear. Conquest was a science, and his dominion had perfected it over millennia. First came the ultimatum, then the bombardment, and finally the submission, a reliable sequence that had worked on every species they'd encountered. Until now. Now, his fleet was dying in the cold silence of space. The Pale Rider was a ghost in the dark, moving in ways that defied physics and, frankly, Kallix-Var's patience. Their advanced sensors couldn't track it. Their weapons couldn't lock onto it. Every time his ships adjusted tactics, the human warship adapted faster, slicing through formations with impossible precision. Another explosion bloomed across the void. A Zharn battleship splitting in two, its armor peeled back like a crushed insect. The bridge shook as fragments of debris rattled against the Dominion flagship's shields. Commander, an officer stammered, his mandibles clicking erratically. We are losing vessels at an unprecedented rate. I can see that, Kallix-Var snapped, resisting the urge to pulverize the fool's exoskeleton with his bare hands. Explain how one human ship is dismantling an entire fleet. A different officer, who looked as though he deeply regretted his life choices, hesitated before answering. It appears to be using, he paused, struggling for words. Unfair tactics. Kallix-Var blinked. Unfair. Yes, Supreme Commander. It does not engage in honorable combat. It strikes, disappears, and reappears at unpredictable angles. It has cloaking beyond our understanding and weapons that... A horrific screech cut through the transmission feeds as another Zharn warship detonated violently, its core rupturing from within. A single white-hot lance of energy had speared through its midsection, and within seconds, the once mighty vessel was reduced to little more than a rapidly cooling debris field. A voice crackled into the Dominion's communication channels. Let me get this straight, Elias Graves said, voice utterly relaxed. You're mad because I'm not standing still and letting you shoot me? That's adorable. Silence stretched across the bridge. The crew visibly tensed. Kallix-Var exhaled sharply, forcing his mandibles to remain still. Human, he growled. Supreme Commander Roach, Graves replied smoothly. Every officer turned to Kallix-Var, waiting for the inevitable homicidal outburst. But the Supreme Commander only exhaled slowly. You think this is amusing? A little, yeah, Graves admitted. I mean, you show up with thousands of ships, demand our surrender like some Saturday morning cartoon villain. And now that it's not going your way, you're flailing? A pause. Gotta say, it's a strong look for you. Kallix-Var muted the transmission before he lost control and started screaming. He never muted transmissions. He thrived on intimidation. But there was something uniquely infuriating about this human, This Elias Graves, a creature that should have been insignificant. Yet here he was, single-handedly reducing the Zharn Dominion's military superiority to an embarrassing footnote in history. A blaring alarm pulled him from his spiraling thoughts. One of his officers, pale and shaking, turned toward him. "Supreme Commander, the Pale Rider has reappeared." "Where?" The officer swallowed. "Above us." It took Kallix-Var exactly 1 second to realize what that meant. The Pale Rider was directly over the Dominion flagship, and if it fired, a tremor rocked the ship as power sputtered across the bridge. The lights flickered, the shields collapsed, and every screen displayed the same terrifying data. Weapons systems offline. Shields offline. Navigation offline, ***. The Dominion's most advanced warship was now a floating, defenseless brick. A single transmission cut through the chaos. "Hey, buddy," Graves said, sounding entirely too pleased with himself. "Guess what happens when you don't pay attention to your power core shielding?" Kallix-Var didn't respond. He was too busy watching the status display's hemorrhage red warnings. The Pale Rider had somehow injected a gravitational feedback loop into the flagship systems, sending its power grid into a spiraling collapse. The bridge officers were panicking now, their composure evaporating like mist under the sun. "What do we do?" someone whispered. Kallix-Var forced himself to straighten. He was a commander of the Dominion. He would not crumble in the face of a human trickster. "You think you've won?" he said, reopening the channel. "We still have thousands of ships." "Yeah, about that," Graves replied. "They seem to be leaving." Kallix-Var's blood froze. He turned to the tactical displays and saw what Graves was talking about. The surviving Dominion ships, those not yet ripped apart by the Pale Rider's rampage, were doing something Kallix-Var had never witnessed before. They were retreating, not in a coordinated fallback, not in a strategic withdrawal. They were running. Kallix-Var's mandibles twitched. "No," he whispered. Across the bridge, officers quietly stepped back, silently questioning their own loyalty. Graves' voice crackled through the speakers one last time. "You brought an empire's worth of warships to our doorstep and thought we'd roll over." A pause. "Earth doesn't do surrender. And we don't forget." Kallix-Var slammed his fists against the console, his exoskeleton cracking the reinforced material. "This isn't over." "Oh, Supreme Commander," Graves said with the kind of satisfaction that could level civilizations. "I absolutely hope you believe that." The transmission cut out. The Pale Rider vanished. The Dominion flagship, once the pride of the fleet, now drifted, its power failing, its commander seething, and its once invincible forces scattering into the void like frightened insects. For the first time in his long, brutal career, Kallix-Var felt something he did not recognize. It took him several moments to find the word for it. Dread. And somewhere, out there in the endless dark, the Pale Rider watched. Kallix-Var had never felt quite so alone. His flagship, once the pride of the Zharn Dominion, was now a floating wreck, its systems crippled, its weapons useless, and its shields drained. The Pale Rider, that one human warship, had brought his empire to the brink of collapse. The remnants of his fleet scattered, and the survivors, who'd once served with unshakable faith, were now silently questioning the very foundation of their superiority. But Kallix-Var wasn't done yet. Not yet. He clenched his mandibles, feeling the pressure of every one of his decisions. This was personal. Elias Graves, the so-called Pale Rider, had made a mockery of his entire military strategy. There was still one last thing Kallix-Var could do. He had planetary bombardment on his side. He might be trapped in space with a crippled fleet, but Earth was still vulnerable. "We have one weapon left," Kallix-Var muttered to his tactical officer. "Prepare the planetary disintegration cannons." The officer hesitated, his voice quivering. "Supreme Commander, Earth's defenses are... prepare the cannons. Kallix-Var snapped. "We will make them pay for this humiliation." Across the bridge, the tension was palpable. The crew, once proud and brimming with confidence, now stood frozen, unwilling to meet their commander's gaze. But Kallix-Var didn't care. This was no longer about the fleet. It was about revenge, about restoring the Dominion's honor, and about destroying whatever humanity thought it had gained. The countdown began, but before the final digit could blink to zero, a familiar, infuriating voice interrupted. "Hey, Captain Roach, guess what happens when you get desperate?" Kallix-Var's heart skipped a beat. The Pale Rider's transmission was back. His mandibles tightened in fury. "Not again!" Graves' voice, as smug as ever, rang out. "You know, I've been thinking. It's cute that you think you can destroy Earth with your shiny little planet cracker. But here's the thing. We've been anticipating this." Kallix-Var stared at the tactical display, noticing the change. The disintegration cannons were no longer receiving power. His planet killer weapons were offline. The entire system had been hacked, and Graves hadn't even bothered to fire a shot. Surprised? Graves continued, amusement thick in his tone. "I can't really blame you. I mean, who'd expect a one-man ship to bring an empire to its knees? But hey, let's talk about your last-ditch effort, shall we?" Kallix-Var hissed, slamming his fist into the console. "You think this is a game, human?" "Well, it's a bit of a game," Graves replied with an exaggerated sigh. "And you've been doing great, really. But we need to wrap this up, don't we?" Kallix-Var's eyes flickered to the remaining ships in his fleet, who were now scattered in every direction, fleeing the wrath of the Pale Rider. He had one shot left. He could pull the last remnants of his fleet together, retreat to the far reaches of space, and lick his wounds. Or he could make a final stand, taking his planet-cracking weapons and using them against the humans he had underestimated. He chose revenge. "Fire the cannons," he roared, his voice laced with fury. "Destroy Earth, and let it be known that no one mocks the Zharn Dominion." He pushed the command with everything he had. The display lit up, and a guttural hum filled the room as the massive weapon systems powered up. But before the cannons could fire, another blast of energy, like a bolt of lightning, surged through his ship systems, causing the entire vessel to shudder violently. "Ah, didn't see that coming. Did you?" Graves' voice echoed again, this time with a mocking chuckle. "I'll shut down your last hope, Roach. You're done." The holographic display blinked, and Kallix-Var stared in disbelief. The planetary cannons were now completely offline, and every system in the flagship was locked down tight. He was powerless, helpless, unable to stop the final judgment that the Pale Rider had prepared for him. "You see, I don't like bullies," Graves continued, his tone lighter now, almost casual. "And you, my friend, came into my home and tried to destroy everything. So, in return, I'm going to give you something special. A front row seat." Kallix-Var struggled to comprehend what he was hearing. A front row seat. What did that mean? He turned to his officers, his mind racing, but they were all staring at the screen. And then it hit him. Graves wasn't going to just destroy them. He wasn't going to make a quick end. He was going to humiliate them. A dread unlike anything Kallix-Var had ever felt gripped him. The Pale Rider wasn't here for a quick victory. He was here to ensure the entire Zharn fleet felt every ounce of their failure. Graves had already done the impossible. He had made Kallix-Var's entire fleet look like a bunch of helpless fools. Now he was going to ensure no one would forget. The screen flashed once more, and Kallix-Var's worst nightmare unfolded. The remnants of his fleet, scattered across the galaxy, suddenly received a transmission. It was the Pale Rider's voice, now broadcasting to the entire fleet. "To the Zharn Dominion, who thought they could conquer Earth, you failed. And you will never be allowed to forget this. Your humiliation will echo across the stars. Run if you can, but the Pale Rider watches." The channel clicked off, and Kallix-Var knew the battle was over. The retreating ships would be scattered, pursued relentlessly. There would be no safe haven, no redemption. The Zharn Dominion was not just defeated. It was broken. Kallix-Var's mandibles clicked helplessly as his flagship drifted in the void, his final words barely audible. "We were outclassed." And somewhere, in the cold depths of space, the Pale Rider's ghostly presence lingered, watching, waiting for the next threat to rise. But for now, Earth was safe, and Graves, the man who had once been a legend, had proved that humanity was far from the underdog. And the Pale Rider would be waiting. Always.